This afternoon, National Tripartite Committee agrees a 10% increase in base pay for organized labor. We have details as President Mahama joins in on the negotiations.
Also to come, services of some government departments and agencies halted as ClockSAG begins strike over appointment of births and deaths registrar.
A lot later, Northern Regional Hospital facing imminent shutdown over mounting debt of some 3.3 million cedis owed to the National Health Insurance Authority due to overpayments now detected. We have details. Hello there, welcome to yet another exciting edition of News Central. I am Mawina Igbeta.
And I am Kameni Amano. The news starts right now. Let's start on a rather good note for Labour, because the National Tripartite Committee this afternoon, comprising the government, employers and organised labour, has agreed on a 10% increase in the base pay for organised labour. We have details as President Mahama joined the negotiations in the last hour of this morning. Now, we know the discussions, which began earlier this month, come amid growing concerns over cost of living increases and labour demands for fair compensation. Now, the negotiations are expected to be concluded this week and factored into government's budget and economic policy to be presented later in March. Now, President John Dramani Mahama, as I mentioned earlier, of course, joined Labour at the negotiations table. The current national daily minimum wage, if you didn't know, stands at 18.15 cedis. We can now touch base with our Labour Affairs correspondent, Danny Lopuku, who's been sniffing around this meeting. Danny, does this mean that the minimum wage, so to speak, has also been determined? And what figure are we looking at here with a 10% increase in base pay?
Right. So, come on, let's put the discussion into perspective. Now, there were two negotiations which were conducted. The first one is on the base pay negotiations. Then the other one is on the minimum wage negotiations. But usually, when it comes to the base pay, it's been determined between government and organized labor. But with the minimum wage, you have the national tripartite. So you have government on one side, you have the employers on one side. They also have organized labor. Now, when they concluded discussions this morning on the base pay, government agreed to grant 10% to public sector workers. And i.e. the public sector workers are those who are on the single spine salary structure, those who are paid by controller. They are those who are benefiting from the 10% increment as I speak to you. And then the 10% minimum wage are for those within the private form or those who are within the private sector. So these are the differences. So as I speak to you now,
but so Danny, we know that this is not what Labour wanted. They wanted something much more than this. Initially, the government had talked about 6%. Now they came to a more compromising 10%. How do the Labour representatives feel about, this decision?
Right. So, in fact, they are very much disappointed because they thought government was going to grant them something higher. Because when we look at the 2024 figures, 2024 from January to July, they got 24%. They got 22%. Then from July to the end of December, they got in addition 2%, where they got 25%. They were thinking that they would have gotten something higher, but unfortunately, government granted 10%. Solely because the President John Dramani Mahama today joined the meeting. And actually, when you have President taking part in negotiations, it becomes very difficult for Labour to take an interim position and Labour not to shift from the earlier position. I think the presence of the President, John Dramani Mahama, really was able to convince organized labor to accept the 10%
indeed, right?
increment.
It seems government played its hands well. But is it normal for the President to sit in on negotiations like this?
Right, so this is not the first time President Mahama has joined organized labor's meeting. I hope you recall when he was the president around 2014 thereabout, he also joined the similar negotiations. And want to look at the history slightly. President Kufuor was able to meet the Ghana Medical Association when he issued some negotiations. President Akufo-Addo also did the same. Then President Mahama, I think this is the second time or the third time, he's been able to engage organizers. Now, when you have the president coming into meetings like this, now obviously labor, their hands are very tight, and you can't look in the face of the president and deny or tell
and
the
say no.
not going to accept the figure. Exactly, you can't look in the face and say no. So that has really compelled labor to us. So as I speak to you now, labor, nobody has even intended to speak to the media because they are disappointed. They look at. They consider when we were given the 4% and the 7% some few years ago, that really created a lot of problems for them. Their members even came after them. This time around, the government has been able to convince them to accept 10%. And 10% is on the lower side. We'll look at when you compare that to the 2024 figure. So Labour, actually, the Secretary General, the chairman of Forum, and the entire Labour as a body, they are really, really disappointed. But hey, they have to accept the 10%, and they have to move on and wait for the next round of negotiations, hopefully by the end of this year or early parts of next year.
Indeed, Danny, we know that you spoke with the Labour Relations Minister. Did he say what factors led to this 10% that was agreed upon? I mean, whether there was a tact or not?
Right. So I want to listen to the Minister of Labour, Jobs and Employment. He began, just like what the Finance Minister so far has been saying, that the economy has not been in good shape. For that reason, Labour must consider the state of the economy. They also looked at cost of living. They also considered inflation and the inflation trends, the macroeconomic stabilities. Some of these pointers actually played out in their meeting. When you take some of these concerns, Labour also be looking at their circumstances. When you go to the market, how much do you spend? What is happening to the main incomes that you are receiving? They looked at all these factors, and finally they may have to agree. And when we follow negotiations very closely, this morning the president of John Dramani Mahama really did the magic. Really was able to convince Labour to accept the 10%. And that Labour was not going to accept that because Labour started from 60% as I closed of yesterday. Government came with 5%, and then.
Well, Danny, did we lose you there? It seems we lost our Labour Affairs correspondent, Daniel Opoku, but we can take a listen to the Labour Relations Minister, Dr. Rashid Pelpo.
An increase in the national daily minimum wage by 10% over the 2024 national daily minimum wage, which translates into a new national daily minimum wage of 19.97 Ghana cedis. The effective date for the implementation of the 2025 minimum wage shall be 1st of March 2025. All establishments, institutions, or organizations whose daily minimum wages are below the new rate should adjust accordingly. 5. Any establishment, institutions, or organizations that flouts the 2025 national daily minimum wage shall be sanctioned in accordance with the law. The National Tripartite Committee recommends that the 2025 national daily minimum wage should be tax exempt. Signed.
Dr. Rashid Pelpo is Labour Relations Minister. Earlier was our Labour Affairs correspondent, Daniel Opoku.
With that announcement, you presuppose all is well on the Labour front. Not quite the case, as we know that members of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association, CLOGSAG, have begun their nationwide strike to protest the appointment of Samuel Boche as the registrar of the Births and Deaths Registry. On Wednesday, the minister in charge of government communications, Felix Kwachofosu, said the president has the power to appoint and also revoke appointments. Now, according to the minister, the appointment of Samuel Adom-Botwe does not infringe any constitutional provision. Meanwhile, a section of Clocksack staff have distanced themselves from the nationwide strike as declared by the association's leadership. There's been a statement from the aggrieved members who've described the strike set to begin today as unjustified and irrelevant to the conditions of service. George Quainin has been visiting the ministries and other of these government agencies. Let's try and gauge the mood, really, what it is like on the grounds. Are we seeing some of the staff present and working as we've received the statement from some aggrieved members? Let's connect with George right now. George, where have you been? What's been the impact of the strike?
Thank you so much, Maureen. I'm coming to you live from the ministries here in Accra. Precisely, this is the Health Ministry, and I've been to a couple of them, and the situation is still the same. For instance, I went to the Ministry of Education, where I met this woman from the UK who came with his Ghanaian partner just to have a project ongoing with the ministry. But when she came, there were no workers there. The reception was closed, and even the visitors' room was also closed. So clearly, she couldn't proceed with whatever intention she came with. And so, as it stands now, she left, unattended to. She left frustrated, not knowing her fate. It's an urgent project, she told me. And so, until workers resume from the strike, she don't know what her fate is. We've been to other ministries, like the Health Ministry is the same. Most cars you see here were parked here yesterday, so you might think that there are people inside, but that's not what it is. Well, if you've been to the ministry, you can tell that it's a bit deserted. It used to be human and vehicular traffic, but that situation is not what it is today. And one thing is, you might only think that people that come to engage in ministries are the ones that are, being, affected. But the people that also ply their trade here, traders here, are also complaining bitterly. And for someone who sells fruit here and who sells a wares as early as 11 a.m. and still has wares here, not bought, she's really concerned about this very strike. She wants government to, come into this matter and resolve this as soon as possible. But there's this one trader here with me who also sells to workers here. She tells me that she has, customers on this very floor, the second floor, and none of them are here. So, surprisingly, you should have to go with this words back home. Maybe some know, Kasa, you are live on TV3. Strike, ne dream say Bianca, conform ba buying and China, a home, but no more to add is any hammer.
A high and pa, Miffy assessor, I am matching 1 o'clock, me drew at 4 o'clock. Maybe drew her and on per 2 Obia ni ho, me numbness way, me names and a Miami home. Office for no muto nam no mame because office we are you see o strike ti me hu sana me ya no
na one to say on beko strike
minim
that means we go back to assessor one
me stand ko assessor wa kabadista no ya asa
so how long will it take you from here to assessor
4 hours. Wow. 3-4 hours from eastern region enti me pa Abanchow, so who mobo, none your moody at 2 no, on your mawon.
But I don't know, so unim didn't or strike. I don't know if unima. Let me just tell you. So, birth and death registry, you're the new registrar, Akoto. Who is a registrar, no, or in who I share this mutuan, or end this into my infant war. And into no more strike. And yet, say, be a more per se, and 2 almost salary and every.
Oh, so moon.
Right, that's my colleague George Quainin providing details there and interacting with a trader really with respect to what it is that's happening. But just quickly running you through quick details as to the number of individuals who are on strike. We're talking of some 70,000 plus members of Clocksack who have currently laid down their tools. Unfortunately, we couldn't get ifs based on that earlier statement. Some had defied the orders of their national leadership. But like I'm telling you, 70,000 plus individuals, our members of Clocksack, are on strike, and they cut across respective agencies. And so the Office of the Head of Civil Service, Public Services Commission, the Ghana Statistical Service, Controller and Accountant General's Department, and the month ending, if the strike should proceed, the agency responsible for making payments to all these individuals who've received, 10% increase in base pay, they are on strike. And so if you're watching at home and you're a government worker, perhaps you have some sort of concern with the fact that all staff of the Controller and Accountant General's Department are on strike. The Registrar General's Department as well, they are a part of CLOCSAG and are expected to be on strike. The Ghana Immigration Service, amongst many others, Ghana Revenue Authority, Ghana Audit Service. So that's just by way for you with respect to a number of these agencies who are partaking in this industrial action by CLOCSAG because of the leadership composition of the Births and Deaths Registry. And there'll be a lot more for you if you stay with us here on TV3 and NewsCentral. But we can bring you a bit more right now on the news.
Indeed. Now, persons who walk to some district assemblies and other agencies like the Births and Deaths departments to seek services have had to return to their various destinations without being attended to. The Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana are on strike to demand removal of the newly appointed Registrar Samuel Butchie. Ibrahim Abubakar has visited some affected agencies and departments to assess the impact of the strike. He's joined us for the very latest from the Ashanti Regional Capital, Kumasi. Ibrahim, talk to us. What have you observed so far? No one at work?
Well, exactly. Currently, you can even feel it at my background. I'm at the premises of the Asukwa Municipal Assembly, and ordinarily, this place is quite busy anytime you come here. Even though we don't have MMDCs yet, this place is always busy. But today the situation is quite different. You don't find people here. Those who came in the morning were asked to return to their various destinations because they cannot be attended to. So currently, some of the offices, even though are open, we have national service personnel in the offices, but they are limited in the kind of service they will be able to render. So they are just in there, but they cannot do anything. In the morning, we also went to the Birth and Death Registry office in the region, and quite a number of people had lined up because they were not aware of any strike. The security man was also not aware, so they were all waiting for workers to come and render their services to them. But they waited 8, 9, and no one was there until 9:30. When one of the workers came, he said he came to pick something, but he decided to stay for a little longer so that he will have the opportunity to tell those who come that workers there are on strike, and for that matter, they have to go and come another day. But that place was a bit chaotic because apparently people...
Well, look at that. We lost Ibrahim Abubakar on that connection. But we can take a listen to those people who spoke to earlier today.
An official letter to the MC, but apparently they are on strike, and that closer strike has really affected. So I wasn't able to officially deliver the letter. So I've been turned away. That's basically it. Yeah. Into the government to actually heal to their plea so that they can resume work, so that I think business could continue. Member social welfare, mama. I don't know.
Well, members of the public who were seeking services of CLOCSAG members there from the Ashanti region. Earlier was our correspondent, Ibrahim Abubakar.
Let's touch base on the same matter in the Volta region. Faisal Abdul Idris is my colleague. He's joined us right now with details as to how the strike is impacting service delivery from these critical government agencies. Faisal, tell us what you've gathered thus far with regards to the CLOCSAG strike.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. And so this morning, I made checks across the various agencies and departments where we can find CLOCSAG members, particularly at the Volta Regional Coordinating Council and then also the whole Municipal Assembly, where we realized several of the staff were not at post. So after yesterday, somewhere around 4 p.m., the communique came out, and so members here in the region were told not to show up for work today. Some indicated that they didn't get this communique, and so they reported to work this morning. Leadership of CLOCSAG in the region is telling us that they would ensure that from tomorrow going, there will be an absolute compliance to this strike action. I was at the birth and death registry earlier and met people who had come in the morning to have some service with them. Some had come to seek either birth certificate or register. But when they got to the place, because there was nobody inside to tell them that they were on strike, some were seated for close to 2 hours when I got in to inform them that the people are on strike. And so it's devastating across the various agencies where some form of service is supposed to be delivered. People go there and they don't find anybody at post to help them do this. Those who have even reported to work, not really getting the community early, are not even working. They are just around doing nothing.
Right, Faisal, let's listen to some of the individuals you've been interacting with who couldn't get service rendered to them, just briefly.
Yesterday I was here to do birth set, the regular one. So today the person called me, like they said the regular one is within 3 to 4 months. So the person said I should come and do inquiry so that they will change it to express for me. But when I got here this morning around 8:30, I checked, but no one was in. The door was locked. So I don't know why they are not at work yet.
You do not know they are on strike?
No, please.
You didn't hear of that?
No, please.
Okay, so they are on strike is the reason they are not here. But when you got here this morning, did you call the person who told you to come yesterday?
No, I did not call.
Don't you have the contact?
And they gave me a receipt to, if the listing is ready, I can come for it. But for me, I don't know. I'm just here to ask if they can change it to express for me, because the within 3 to 4 months is long for the person. So the person said I should come and do top up so that they can change it for me.
Faisal, just quickly, have we seen any staff at all come through seeking to defy this directive of a strike?
Not at all. Even though I met some people at post today, they indicated that the communique got to them a bit late and is the reason why they showed up at work. I contacted the regional executives who told me that they are very much aware that some of their members showed up for work this morning because the communique got to them very late, but they are ensuring that tomorrow and going forward, particularly before the strike action is declared or suspended, to ensure that members comply without any excuses.
Right then, Faisal, thank you very much for those details. That's my colleague Faisal Abdul Idris. And we'll move away from this to other matters, taking you to the Akwatia constituency, where some residents have expressed mixed reactions following the conviction and the bench warrant issued for the arrest of the NPP's NSE Alkumi. While some have welcomed the Koforidua High Court's decision, viewing it as a step towards justice, others have raised concerns about the implications of the ruling. Let's hear from them.
I disagree with his arrest. The responsibility lies with Parliament. He should be arrested because it's a court order that must be upheld.
He must be arrested as it is a direct order from the court. Arresting him will serve as a strong example for other MPs.
It will not set a good example for the other MPs to follow.
Northern Regional Hospital, formerly known as Tamale Central Hospital, is facing imminent shutdown over mounting debt of over 3.3 million cedis in overpayment by the National Health Insurance Authority. In March 2018, an audit report conducted by the NHIA reveals that an amount of 4.2 million cedis was wrongfully paid to the hospital in duplicate claims of some 15,876 submitted to NHIA for reimbursement. Christopher Amwako has more on this story. Christopher, talk to us about those intercepted documents. What do you see in there?
Yes, so Tebede, I can confirm to you that the Northern Regional Hospital, formerly Tamale Central Hospital, is currently struggling because when I visited the hospital today, information I got owing to the intercepted documents revealed that as of November when hospitals were paid claims by the Health Insurance Authority, the Tamale. Northern Regional Hospital did not receive a dime from this payment. And so it is very difficult for them to get some essential consumables to serve their clients. And rightly so, Kemini, as you mentioned, the hospital as it stands now is owing the Health Insurance Authority over 3.3 million Ghana cedis from an audit conducted on the hospital between 2014 and 2017. The hospital was overpaid following some duplicate claims that is submitted to the Health Insurance Authority. And so, Kemini, it's a very sad development for the Northern Regional Hospital and clients who visit the hospital.
Or is this hospital for residents?
Yes, so Kemini, it's a very dire situation for the people there because visiting the hospital before has been something that a lot of people go there because of the pressure on the main Tamale teaching hospital. But in this situation, the numbers are gradually reducing because for the clients who visit the hospital, you go and you are unable to get some quality healthcare services, especially when it comes to consumables that you are supposed to be given from the hospital. Remember, Kemini, also that last year we did a story about a patient losing her life as a result of a surgery that was being conducted because there was not enough oxygen or there was no oxygen in the hospital. And so these are some of the repercussions coming from the situation that the hospital is finding itself in.
Authorities about this development in terms of when things could turn around?
Yes, so Kemini, according to the hospital, in that document I intercepted, they are saying that they have written to the Ministry of Health. They've also written to the Ghana Health Service, appealing to them to, as it were, hold a meeting between the hospital and health insurance so that they can do a 5-year payment model, which in every month the hospital is willing to pay some 56,000 Ghana cedis. So within that 5-year period, they should be able to pay the monies. It's better for them than the Health Insurance Authority taking all the monies that hit their account. As it stands now, they don't even know when claims are paid, whether they are going to get some portions of their money or everything will be taken by Health Insurance Authority.
I see, Christopher. We'll end it here for now, but keep an eye on this story. Christopher Mwako is a Savannah region correspondent. You're watching News Central. We'll take our first break. When we come back, we'll bring you more stories. Just stay.
You know, 1 bucket of flamingo paint is equal to several buckets of
Welcome back to News Central. Now, presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party for the 2024 elections, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has strongly condemned the NDC government's decision to terminate the contract of individuals appointed by the previous administration. According to Dr. Bawumia, the focus of John Mahama's government should be on creating more jobs rather than rendering Ghanaians unemployed through politically motivated dismissals. Let's try engage Dr. Jonathan Asante-Ochoa, is a political analyst, on the latest from the NPP's 2024 flag bearer. Doc, I appreciate that you could speak to us. Dr. Jonathan Asante-Ochoa is a political analyst with the University of Cape Coast. He's joined us via Zoom. Dr. Bawumia begins his release by acknowledging a personal vow he made to allow the new president and his government get the needed space to get a grip of things and settle down. Yet he says he finds it necessary to come in at this time to want to draw the attention of the current administration over dismissals he believes are ill-fated and one that goes contrary to the constitution and the democracy which we're practicing.
Yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. The message is good, but the problem is the messenger, the one carrying the message. I think that if he considers his level of docility when he was in government and triple times of those things that happened that never uttered a word, we may have to acknowledge that probably as a nation we have a problem when it comes to one government moving to the other. You remember that this particular trajectory started taking place somewhere in 2001. The famous slogan of proceed or leave, proceed or leave, proceed or leave. And we heard that, famously on television stations and radio stations and whatnot, and even the print media. I did not stop there. Well, if you look at Professor Mills's era, he even allowed the MMDCs to even stay up to 3 months before they were relieved. And these are even political appointments. If you remember what happened in 2017, we are talking about around 13,000 over, public sector employees that were sacked by the Nanado regime. And there are statements to that effect. Now, it has happened in 2024. After the 2024 election, it is happening in 2025. So I think that the idea of aggregating all these and make them appear as though they are ills, I think leaves much to be desired. I also urge the government that things of that nature will bring some kind of negative publicity. And so those who are mandated by the president, like, for example, the Minister for Employment, Jobs, and whatever relations, ought to have the data. We need to have the processes upon which all these people were engaged, those who have been asked to leave. We need to know how they were engaged. That is the first step. There is the need for that documentation because in the public sector, you just don't get employed. You go through a lot of processes. And so if we are talking about those who went through processes long before the 7th December, then obviously asking those categories of people to go, out of work will be unjustified. On the other hand, if it is a matter of, labor weapon used by the erstwhile government to tie the hands of the president or the current government, that one, the president and the team, that's the government, have every right to terminate the appointment of all of these. So that is my position, because as it stands now, there is a need for disaggregation. And that disaggregation is very important so that you don't lump everybody up and say that the government is guilty, because now people are playing the victim card. And you know very well that when you have people playing the victim card, you have people supporting them. And once the disaggregation has not been done, it gives a negative publicity to the government. Because there is so much cynicism in the fact that a government that is leaving office will pile up thousands of employees on the payroll of the state, when in actual fact we do not have any evidence of financial clearance given. And so it is bad governance, it is sheer bad faith on the part of the former government by playing these innocent Ghanaians, right, as, what's it called? They are using them as a leverage. They are using them as a pawn in the hands, of the current government, as a way of playing the current government into some kind of a trap.
Doc,
and I think that it leaves much to be desired. Yes.
This raises a critical question of the role of the transition team and all of that, because what we know as well is that the head of the civil service forms a key part in the transition process. If it is the case, these exemptions which you've asked are persons whose appointment or negotiation process started well and truly before the 7th of December, that should be captured in the records which will be presented to the transition team by the head of the civil service. And so are we seeing a situation where there's a challenge in that process of transition, which is resulting in this wholesale dismissal of even persons possibly who were engaged well and prior before December 7?
Yeah, so that is why I said that there is a need for that disaggregation. Besides, there is a problem with the transition. And if you remember so clearly, the incoming transition then had cause to complain to the, the exiting transition team that, look, you are, giving employment in their thousands at this point in time, when you know very well that you are leaving. It's the same thing that President Kufuor did when he was leaving office, that he passed the single spine and became an albatross around the neck of Professor Mills. But because of the goodwill that he had with the people of this country, he had to beg labor to hesitate, to exercise some kind of restraint so that they would take their time and implement that. And which he did in piecemeal by starting with the Ghana Police Service, if you so remember. And so it is becoming a kind of weapon that exiting government tend to set a trap, for the incoming one. So there is that lacuna in the transitional arrangement. And so if we are to look at this particular issue in a dispassionate manner, then I think that playing these ordinary Ghanaians into the political fray of the two political parties leaves much to be desired. It is unfair to the ordinary Ghanaian who has been used as a ruse or a trap by the incoming government. Besides, the incoming government have every reason, especially when they themselves are going on austerity measures, and they are trying to balance the odds and ensure that the hole that has been created is plugged.
Doc, I appreciate these thoughts that you could share with us. That's Dr. Jonathan Asante-Ottri. He's a political analyst with the University of Cape Coast speaking to us this afternoon. Let's bring you some more stories right now.
The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amakofibua, has called for a collective action to mitigate the impact of illegal mining, or as we know, Galamsey, speaking on the floor of Parliament on Wednesday, 19 February. He said that 9 forest reserves are no longer under state's control.
Benefits we derive from the forest and our increasing knowledge about the importance of forests to our ecosystem and well-being, Ghana's forests continue to be under serious threat of deforestation and forest degradation due to factors known to all of us. Ghana is currently faced with an unprecedented threat to our forest resources and water bodies due largely to illegal small-scale mining activities. This situation has assumed crisis proportions with dire national security and public health consequences that require immediate attention. Honourable Speaker, it will interest you to note that out of the 288 forest reserves that I have mentioned, a whopping 44 of these forest reserves are under serious attack by illegal miners. They are heavily armed with sophisticated weapons and very violent with large numbers of excavators, making it extremely difficult for forest guards and the rapid response team to control them, since they have no sophisticated weapons to control them. Over 9 out of the 44 forest reserves, and Mr. Speaker, this is very important, over 9 out of the 44 forest reserves have been completely taken over by these illegal mining tasks with impunity. And the Forestry Commission no longer have access to these forest reserves.
Daryl Bosu is Deputy National Director of Environmental NGO Arusha, Ghana. Let's have a conversation on the back of what we've heard from the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amakofi-Bua, who we just heard from. Daryl, I appreciate you talking to us, but you heard the Minister. It's been 40 days since the government was sworn in. Recall prior to now, in fact, prior to the new government, how important it was not only for the public, but for then opposition for an emergency to be called. But here we are, 40 days in, no emergency. How do you feel about that?
Thank you very much, Kemini, for this. And I must say that I am really shocked by the kind of legacy that the new government has to deal with and how the issue has escalated. But just as you said, I'm really expecting that, considering how dire the situation is, we need this government to, as a matter of urgency, really activate an action to address this matter. Because if we tarry any longer, it's going to get to a level that we cannot address. So I think that we have waited for too long. The government was in opposition. This government was in opposition. They spoke very loudly about actions to Galamsey. I think coming to office, they should prioritize addressing Galamsey just as they did all around. And so for me, I think that we wasted time, significant time, and allowing these people to really come to this level of terrorizing communities and even the Forest Commission. Now, all of this that we are observing now happened within the transition period, because we saw that the government was silent and we saw this brutal takeovers and seizure with some substitution of miners in certain areas, and they have seen that government is going to come after them. So they have also called for reinforced security to help them do this. Until we really treat this as a national security and with immediate effect, I don't think we are going to be able to address this menace as it is now.
Indeed, Daryl, I'm afraid we are out of time for this conversation. Thank you so much for talking to us. Daryl Bosu is with Arusha, Ghana. I want to quickly take you to Parliament, where right now the minority once again is addressing members of the press over the arrest warrant on the head of the Akwatia MP, Ernest Kumi.
Amadehe granted the ex-party application for interim injunction without recourse to Honorable Yao Kumi, and same was communicated to him via WhatsApp. On the 3rd January 2025, Honorable Ernest Yao Kumi, through his counsel Gary Nimaku, filed a motion on notice at the High Court No. 3, Koforidua, to set aside the order for interim injunction on the basis that Honorable Henry Boachi Yadom did not, an emphasis placed, did not properly invoke the jurisdiction of the court for the grant of the order for interim injunction, because it did not comply with Article 99(1) of the 1992 Constitution, Sections 16 and 18 of the ROPA, Representation of the People Law, 1992 PNDC Law 284, and the Public Election Regulations 2020 CI 127. Counsel for Ernest Yao Kumi urged on the court as same is captured in paragraphs 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 of his affidavit in support of the applications as follows. And just for the purposes of emphasis, let me just detail them out. That the jurisdiction of this court is wrongly invoked, and thus any order founded on the wrongful invocation of this court's jurisdiction ought to be void. That the validity of an election to Parliament may be questioned only by an election petition before this court. That an election petition shall be presented to this court within 21 days after the date of publication in a gazette of the result of the elections to which the said election relates. That the second respondent has not published any gazette notification of any declared parliamentary results in Akwatia constituency. That the non-compliance of mandatory statutory provisions by the petitioner, in other forms, respondent, is incurably bad. That the processes filed under the Representation of the People Law 1992 PNDC Law 284 as amended is premature. That this is a proper case where the Honorable Court ought to set aside the order for interim injunction granted by this court on the 2nd January 2025, including all the processes filed by the petitioner / respondent. Counsel for Honorable Henry Boachi Yadom did not file any affidavit in opposition. And let me reiterate this. Counsel for Honorable Henry Boachi Yadom did not file any affidavit in opposition. Surprisingly, the judge, His Lordship Justice Emmanuel Senyo Amedehe, granted the counsel for Henry Boachi Yadom leave to oppose their application on factual matters despite not having filed an affidavit in opposition on record. This is juju and tricks. Counsel for Henry Boachi Yadom did not provide any gazette notification of the parliamentary election results, but opened his phone. He opened his phone in court to say that in open court and to read an online news portal and press conference claiming to have been organized by Dr. Bosman Asari and urged on the court that the results of the Akwitia parliamentary election had been gazetted by the Electoral Commission of Ghana, when same was absolutely untrue. It must be pointed out that on the 5th of January 2025, when counsel for Henry Boachi Yadom was arguing in the court that the parliamentary results for Akwitia constituency had been gazetted, he was in fact misleading the judge, who obviously, because he was also dealing with his whatever terminologies you would give him, decided not to pay a listening ear to the counsel for the Honorable Ernest Kumi. The judge failed to listen to Ernest Kumi's counsel. See that to only listen to Honorable Henry Boachi Yadom's counsel, who obviously gave him a misleading information. And this is what we captured, that he was in fact misleading the judge because it is public knowledge that the parliamentary results in Akwitia constituency was gazetted on the 6th of January 2025. And same can be found in the Ghana Gazette dated 6 January 2025 at page 8093 with Honorable Ernest Yaokumi.
Well, Jerry Ahmed is Bawe MP, and he's also the second deputy whip of the Minority Caucus in Parliament, taking us on another break. When we come back, we'll bring you more stories. Don't go away.
We searched far and wide and discovered the most extraordinary young talents for the all-new season of Talenta Kids Season 16.
Okay, kuno wa charge ya del babon blow pana wa doji.